Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good. And I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good.
I never get sick of that. I love it. Kicking off episode 29 of An Atheist, a Believer, and a Pastor Walk into a Bar. The very well-known face these days of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about some doubt he has with claims that some Christians make about the power of God. He's not sold, quite frankly, nor am I. But we will continue to delve into the mystical and the unknown to try and find something that we could all agree on and understand. We might die of old age before that happens. Let's hope not. Apologies for last week, too. Unforeseen circumstances forced us to cancel episode 29. But we're back, baby, locked and loaded. G'day and welcome. I'm your host, Peter Rowe, presenting this live podcast on YouTube only. Great to have your company on this 24th day of July 2024. Just gone 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time. Broadcasting from Perth, Western Australia. It is bucketing down as we speak. Now, at the moment, you are watching on YouTube alone because we're not on Facebook yet. We need 100 followers. We're having a little trouble actually trying to find out how we get people to follow on Facebook because we can't find the damn follow us button. It's there somewhere. We have to find out where it is. Once we've done that, you can jump onto Facebook and follow us. That would be much appreciated. Tonight, I want to talk about something that Voltaire, the French Enlightenment writer, philosopher, satirist, and historian, said, famous for his wit and his criticism of Christianity and of slavery. Voltaire was an advocate of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and separation of church and state. He said many great quotes, but this is one I particularly like. Anyone who has the power to make you believe absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices. Let me say that again. Anyone who has the power to make you believe absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices. And American politics is at the forefront, he says, a beautiful segue into what's happening in the States. The news and conversations among many of us for obvious reasons. In a matter of days, someone took a pop shot at Trump. His popularity went through the roof, as did part of his ear. And you could well imagine, and to counter that, Biden stepped down, reversing the Trump popularity somewhat, which saw an increase in the popularity of Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris, if you like, who is now directly up against Trump. Lucky her. I hope she has very thick skin, because the man that can only be described as a lampoon of himself will say to whatever it takes to be elected again as the president of the United States. Trump being the vile, no-holds-barred creep that he is, tell us what you really think, Rowie, has already labelled her, and I quote, she is as dumb as a rock, unquote. No surprises there. You'll notice he never really attacks other politicians on policies. He prefers the childlike way of denigrating the character of his opponents simply because he's not smart enough to be able to provide an intelligent argument. He must win at all costs. If he were to take up a debate with Kamala Harris, no doubt she would destroy him on an intellectual level. But of course, he will make sure the playing field is never level. So this got me thinking more about Voltaire, that quote, anyone who has the power to make you believe in absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices. Now, this ties in perfectly for our main theme that runs throughout our podcast series, which is that of belief. So what makes a charismatic leader? How come some people get others to believe absolutely anything and they just do as their leader says? Many people simply believe in Donald J. Trump in spite of his lies and his pathological fear of being wrong. So why do some people believe in the absurdities of people like Trump? Let's dig down. On the panel tonight, somewhat shortened from when I first wrote this, because Luke is unwell. Suresh is not with us, but we are very, very lucky to have Richard Stalls and Jason Jordan on board. Welcome, gents.
Thank you. G'day, Jace.
So we have quite a few nasty people. Let's call them men who make up the list of history's most notorious, vile, cruel, murderous people, ranging from Pol Pot Idi Amin, Joseph Stalin, Hussein, Ayatollah Khamenei, and the worst by far would have to be Adolf Hitler, all who made people around them believe that they were right in their convictions and who many convinced millions that they were doing good. Belief played an integral part. Where does Trump fit into this? I'm not suggesting for a minute that Trump should be lined up along the likes of Hitler or Stalin, but he's pretty damn nasty. My point is this: all of the men I named, including Trump, have one thing in common. They are or were very dangerous people. They don't see things our way, the way that we insist it should be seen, that we are all equal, all one in the love of pursuit, understanding, peace, and reverence. They all have had power to influence the world, not for the betterment of humanity. No, far from it. So does Trump have what it takes to offer something that can be to the betterment of the world? Let's find out, gentlemen. 22 of you, come out of your red and blue corners and start fighting. Who do you reckon wants to go first? Come on.
Oh, go on, Rich. You know you want to.
Oh yeah, look, I find this whole thing fascinating. I don't know. Some people watch some weird shows. My sort of guilty pleasure shows aren't like, the Real Housewives of wherever or anything like that. I'm fascinated with documentaries about Hitler and documentaries about cults. I just find them intensely fascinating. And I'm watching a documentary on Netflix at the moment. It's a documentary on Hitler's rise and fall. And it's anchored in the Nuremberg trials. And it's really fascinating because of some of the stuff that came out. I don't know. It's typically treated as a bit of a hurried denouement to the big story of World War II, which it's actually fascinating what was coming out of those trials. And the documentary becomes very, very clear on how a seeming madman, obviously he was mad by the end of it, but how can an entire nation get behind it? And just the charismatic delivery, the very studied way of delivering his speeches, the propaganda that was around it to get the German people really into it at that time. And one of the things that really stood out to me, which is, I guess, relevant to what we're talking about today, is there was a bit of a turning point for the growing Nazi party, because they started out as a party on a platform. These are the things we stand for. But when it became intensely popular was when I can't remember the guy who's in charge of the propaganda, but he had this brainwave. Goebbels. Forget the platform. We're going to actually promote Hitler as the sort of typical, or the Messiah that we need. So it shifted from the ideology to the man as the one who's going to save us. Who's going to literally, the slogan was "Make Germany Great Again," and that's when his popularity went through the roof, when he was situated as that very charismatic, he's the one who can save us. And it was incredible. It was very worth watching to see that kind of rise to power, and all around a charismatic leader who had, in the eyes of the German people at the time, some very good ideas to get them out of the poverty that was thrust upon them through the Treaty of Versailles, and get them back in the world stage again. So it's fascinating.
We don't often see images of Hitler being charismatic, though, do we? We only see stuff toward the end when he really well and truly lost the plot. And I never saw him as a charismatic figure. But in fact, one of the comments I was going to make was that Hitler seemed to have got to where he did through acts of fear and the propaganda, without there being any charisma attached. But that sounds like a fascinating doc. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, those early years are fascinating. One of the things, talking about these charismatic leaders, you sort of think, oh, they're just naturally that way. Well, he was coached, and you'll see it in all of his early. I've seen these other places. His very early speeches. He'd arrive half an hour late, and the crowd would be in a bit of a frenzy by the time he'd walk up, and he'd just stand quietly for about 3, 4, 5 minutes, just building the tension of what's going on. And then he was told he had to speak slowly, one word, a couple of words, and you see him speak slowly, and then he'd build up and he'd build up and he'd build up. At the end, he's spittle flying and he's just gesturing. He practiced those gestures. In fact, he got himself photographed to just get the right gesture. The whole thing was designed to portray a confident savior of the German people.
Built up into a frenzy at the end, and had he started that way, it wouldn't have had the impact with the people. They knew. Yeah. It's interesting. I had no idea.
And one of the other things about Hitler that most people don't realize is that, and look, in no way am I supporting Hitler or the Nazis, all right? But this is the problem with history, is that it's the winner that writes history. And if you were to take a look back at the beginning of Hitler's career, he actually did some great stuff. He recovered Germany's economy, and there was a whole bunch of policies that were really positive and progressive. And that's why the population started to like Hitler. It's only as time went on and he accrued more power, that's when his real intentions started coming to the fore. And that's when the craziness started. And unfortunately, it's like putting a frog in a pot and turning the heat up slowly. You really don't notice that things have gone terribly wrong until it's way too late to be able to do anything about it. And unfortunately, I think that's a little bit of what happened with Nazi Germany, but no history lesson from me. That's just as I understand it. Yeah. What I really want to touch on, Pete, is you asked the question about why do people support Trump? And in particular, why is it that particular part of the population that Trump is actively working against is the part of the population that support him the most strongly? Like, why are the people who are in poverty, or those that, can't get a meal on the table, or can't have proper health care because they don't have universal health care over in the US, why is it that those people support Trump as much as they do? And I reckon I've worked it out. Those people, they don't have a lot of capital, right? So they can hardly pay their bills. They might have a vehicle. It's a clapped out vehicle. They're probably renting. I'm making some assumptions here, but just bear with me. If they don't have a lot of capital, what Trump can give them is social capital. So what he can do is he can go, those people, those Mexicans, they're not as good as you. And those people, those refugees, they're not as good as you. So suddenly, these people who are in poverty, they've got nothing else, suddenly they're empowered. Suddenly they've got social capital. They are better than those other people, and they are not going to give that away. That is genuine power that Trump is handing to them. So they will go to the end, because that man is giving them the power that they've never had in their lives.
It's a very good point. I concur. I mean, it makes an awful lot of sense. Just before we move on, you're freezing up every 5 seconds, Jace.
All right.
So I don't know what some sort of a setting, but either very cold, and you are down near Albany, so I understand if you are in fact actually freezing. One thing that always stood out to me about Trump is he is everything that all other politicians are not. And people, everyone by and large across the board, aren't big fans of politicians. Let's face it, they're low on the list of people that are trusted and believed in. So he, and I agree entirely with what you're saying, Jace. I think that is absolutely spot on. They're giving them something that costs him nothing. It's rhetoric, but people are buying it, and they're made to feel empowered. They're made to feel special. They're made to feel exclusive, and without even doing anything about it. Couple that together with, I mean, look, clearly, if people say, how can people believe what he's saying? How can Christians put him on a pedestal and say he was sent here by God when he is probably literally the most antithesis example of Jesus I've ever seen in my life? someone walking and breathing who is the complete opposite of everything that you should admire in a human being. And yet they still believe in it because we don't care what he says and what he does and what he's done. We just care the fact that he's not like the rest of them. And for that, that's enough with them. And I don't get that. Greg has jumped on and said, I'm trying to work this new system here, and I just took it off the screen. Did Trump achieve anything or have any influence on the world when he was in power? No. And the same thing will apply in the future. Greg, you are forgetting about the Volkswagen Beetle. That was the one thing he brought to the world that he perhaps shouldn't have. Having said that, I had a couple of Volkswagen Beetles. Look, that is very true, but because different times. I mean, there was no social media. The countries weren't connected back then as they were now. Trump has the power, as does anyone in a powerful position, to have influence to every corners of the globe if he wishes to. And even if he doesn't wish to specifically do that, the economic impact that he has the capability of placing on the world is going to infiltrate. I hope that it doesn't, but so I get your point, but the Nazi Germany was very different. They weren't interested. Hitler wasn't, I don't think, by and large, trying to take over the world. He was just trying to dominate, although he obviously did infiltrate a lot of other countries and do that. But I think that if he wasn't stopped, would he have had an impact on the world? I don't know. You probably know more about that, Rich, than I do.
Yeah, all I know is another show I really do like, Man in the High Castle, is a alternate history of if the Nazis actually did win, and it imagines the US as a sort of Nazi vassal state. So it's fascinating when the Axis powers won. So yeah, I don't know. I'm thankful that history did end up that way and not the other way.
Yeah,
especially after seeing what he was able to make people do. In the end, your Voltaire quote about if you can get somebody to believe in absurdities, you can, I'm paraphrasing, but get them to commit atrocities. And that's exactly what he did. And what's also fascinating to me is Germany was a quote unquote Christian country. These were by and large church-going baptized Christians. And they're not just fighting the war, they're committing mass murder. And I always thought in my mind, the death squads that would go out and literally in Czechoslovakia, I think, is one of the ones they did. 30,000 civilians shot, 30,000 in a valley. These weren't like some uneducated thugs. These were actually they'd been through university. Some of them have been top economic professors. These kinds of very, very smart people were able to be sucked into this horror. And
it's still happening today, not in Germany,
exactly.
Around the world. I mean, Bangladesh at the moment, it's been completely cut off from the world, and there's thousands of students that have been killed. It's a bad comparison. I guess what I'm saying is it's not unusual to have people come to power and then go out and kill lots of people and have a large part of the population support it. It's madness, but it continues to this day. And frankly, if Trump gets into power, I'm not saying that there will be genocide going on around the place, but there will be stuff going on that countries around the world will observe in absolute horror.
Yeah, I do need to make a correction. I mentioned Greg's comment. Did Trump achieve anything or have any influence in the world? I thought it was Hitler, and I misread it. So that, it's a whole new question, isn't it? When he was,
he made America a laughing stock. That's about it.
Yeah, well, he certainly had a negative influence on the country. I mean, the experts have gone through a list of the things he didn't achieve while he was president, and it's fairly long. And the list of things he did achieve to the good betterment of the country and the people certainly was extremely short, if visible at all. So, Trump, not Hitler. Sorry about that, Greg. Apologies. When you talk about the amount of people, and just go to that point that you were talking, Rich, about 30,000 people being slaughtered. That documentary you're watching, do they portray the fact that people are actually totally taken in by Hitler? Did they actually believe in what they were doing was right, or is there an element of people going, we don't want to do this? I mean, it's hard to imagine lining up women and children in the gas chambers and just slaughtering people by that amount.
Yeah.
It's hard to
They weren't
believe
just
that there wasn't people that didn't want to do it, but were forced to do it because they would have been shot had they not.
Go ahead,
But they
Jason,
were
because you're saying the exactly
type-
right thing.
They weren't. They just weren't. They weren't just people. They were a specific type of people,
Oh,
a
yeah.
specific grouping of people, and that common enemy that Hitler created meant that there was a lot of sympathy from the main population, because those people were considered to be responsible for all of the wrongs of the country. And once you can get the whole population railing against a certain part of the population, they've got a common enemy. It's very hard to walk away from that.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting when I'm always fascinated. The end point is just like, how does a whole nation get to that spot? But yeah, the scapegoating mechanism, which is everything going wrong, let's point it at these people, put all, I'm using maybe biblical language for it, put all our sins as the nation upon them, and then destroy them, and hopefully our sins with us. There's actually the scapegoating mechanism when you there's some very clever, I'm trying to remember his name, it will come back to me. Luke, if he was here, he'll be all over it. But it's a commonly observed mechanism in societies. The tension and the brewing violence and the stuff that builds up dissipates when you find that scapegoat and do it. But it's interesting what he called them was subhumans, and then even non-humans. He classified them as non-humans.
Yep.
So it's not genocide, it's extermination in the same way you would exterminate rats.
And the thing is, it started with that, but as it evolved, we went past basically hunting down and killing Jewish people into starting to go for the elite parts of society. So suddenly academics became trash as well. Anybody that wore glasses became trash because they were clearly very smart and they were reading stuff.
You've watched Ricky Gervais as well.
Well, I mean, yes, but I mean it's the known history of how they progressed through as they went through the war, and it scares me to think. I'm seeing the parallels in the United States at the moment. That the amount of people that are anti-science now, that will suddenly think that their opinion is as valuable as somebody that has studied a subject for maybe 30 or 40 years. My opinion is equal to yours. Well, no, it's not. And if, for example, if 99% of scientists think one way and 1% think the other way, that 1% is more than likely wrong. And yet you've got that part of the population over there supporting that 1% because it fits in with their worldview and their own personal prejudices.
And of course, that's not unique to America by any stretch.
No, not at all.
There seems to be a very high percentage of, without being cruel, uneducated lay people in America, and I don't know whether it's very accurate or not, but often you'll see on TikTok big questions on people on the street being asked questions about their own country, to which the vast majority of them actually have no idea. But it isn't unique to America. But let's just say the Olympics are starting soon. They're the gold medalists of being gullible and thinking that and look, this is a it's on our doorstep and has been for. If you are watching tonight on YouTube, great to have your company. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, jump on the little window to the side of your screen there and just feel free to chuck anything you like in there. We are relatively tough, mature, balanced men. that a contradiction in terms? So whatever you want to say, we won't be offended. We are deeply concerned now that if you are a Hitler follower, the fact that we are all wearing glasses is irrelevant. Please don't read anything into that. It's not in any way, shape, or form an indication that we are of the intelligentsia, although we're trying very, very hard. So without honing in too much on American politics, that's something that I've been fascinated with for well, probably for a while, but certainly since Trump got into power. It is it's not just about whether who they're voting for. It's the impact and the man behind the power and what could happen. After seeing there has been an increase in Kamala. What's the last name?
Harris.
Yes. Do you guys see any hope? Because the numbers have equaled up a lot since Biden stepped down. There was clearly he didn't decide that he was suddenly well enough. The experts said if you step down, we can pinch the votes that Trump got by him getting shot in the ear. Any hope when it comes time that she might be able to be the next and first woman president of the United States?
Well, she could be right now. If Biden resigned right now, she could be the first black female president of the United States right now. It's funny because some of the Republicans are actually calling for that. They're calling for it right now. They're saying Biden should resign, which would make Kamala Harris the first ever black female president. And here's the interesting thing. People are saying that the only reason they want that is because that would mean that even if she won this election coming, she wouldn't be able to run for the subsequent one because she'd already been president for 2 terms. But it's not strictly true because it's less than 6 months, because she would only be president for 5 months. She could run for another 2 terms. So it's really interesting. You got to think about what their strategy is there, and do they actually have one, or are they just being thick? Kamala Harris has been a prosecutor, right? That's her whole career has been in law, prosecuting. And it's so funny to actually see now a presidential race of a prosecutor versus the prosecuted. Yes. And it couldn't be. They are promoting her as being the anti-Trump. Like one of the advertisements they've got on TV at the moment specifically calls her the anti-Trump.
Yes.
It's an amazing strategy that they've got. But here's the thing. Trump's only way of dealing with Kamala Harris, the way he thinks, he's either going to be misogynistic or racist or both. He hasn't got anything else. No. And so I think as we move forward towards the election, those who are maybe on the ding-dong about which way they're going to go, I suspect if they see that kind of language and that kind of behavior, I'm hoping that they will lean towards Kamala. I really am. I've got my own misgivings about that woman, though, because, I mean, she's prosecuted many, many cases for people of cannabis use. And you know how I feel about that. So, I'm an anyone but Trumper.
Yeah. Pretty much the same. I mean, I'm actually quite surprised as the aggression of the woman and the language she's using. She's taken it right up to him. She's not. They have figured out, as Joe was fairly complacent when it came to tackling Trump as a human, but in his later days before he actually stood down, he had some fairly stern words to describe Trump. Whereas Kamala has just gone bang. I know who you are. I know as a prosecutor, I've come across your type before. You are everything I know about bad people, and she's gone gung ho. That's obviously a strategy they tried. It may work.
Rowie, my big problem now with what's going on in the US is that Trump is at the head of it all. But what's worse is that he has corrupted the entire Republican Party. The grand old party of yore is no longer the same thing that it once was. These people are going into bat for Trump, knowing full well what he is and what he wants and where he's taking them. And yet they are still supporting him as though they're serfs to some kind of king. And unfortunately, that is exactly what Trump will become the moment that he wins, if he wins, God forbid, this next election. With Project 2025 and what he has already said he'll do on day one, there may never be another Democratic election in that country.
Yeah. It's extraordinary times, and if she does happen to win, as sure as I'm sitting here, he will, of course, call that it was done. It was a deal. It was backhanded. It was underhanded. It was crooked. It was bent. It was twisted. It was fake. Of course, I didn't lose. I can't lose. I
Would it
cannot
be
handle
too
the
extreme
thought
to
of
say
losing.
civil war?
Sorry?
Would it be too extreme to say civil war may well ensue?
No, I don't know. No, I don't think so at all. I mean, he's a very powerful, rich man, and he is psychopathic at best. So yeah, why not chuck a civil war? Yeah, I mean, look what he did before. Look how he rallied the demented and the crazy and the hard done by rednecks and
and it's the group of people who support him the most who are also the people who are the well-armed militia.
Yep. Yes.
That is scary.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's a perfect relationship. They're all made for each other. So getting back to the whole Voltaire statement, which I'll read out again for those who perhaps may have just have joined in, and I'll just refresh your memory. Anyone who has the power to make you believe absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices. Let's try and broaden that out a little bit in other aspects of life where that has been an impact. I mentioned all of the people, and I went through the list of the psychopaths who have impacted on the world. My goodness gracious me, it's a very long list, which seems to have sort of slowed to a halt almost after Hitler. There hasn't been too many from that. I mean, Rwanda, of course, has been a few issues, but how do we broaden that out and talk about that statement from Voltaire, the need and the want for people to believe in good people? At what point do you get to the point where you just simply cannot see someone like Trump as anything other than a savior?
See, he's taking his lessons directly from the Nazis. I mean, it was Goebbels himself who actually said, repeat a lie often enough and it becomes the truth. Now, that's exactly what Trump does. He lies and lies and lies. And even when they have, like, the journalists are absolutely gobsmacked. They've got it on video that he said something or has done something, and he just point blank denies it. How do you can't even argue with that. I mean, any other potential president or past president in history who tried that shit on would have been slapped down and done away with. But this man, for some reason, continues to roll forwards with half the population supporting him. And it beggars belief. I just don't know where it's coming from, other than the social capital thing and people wanting to stick it to the man, stick it to the existing hegemony. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, exactly. So, Rich, finish this sentence for me. Donald Trump is perfect at what?
Oh, he's a perfect showman, isn't he?
Yes.
You know, I used to, what was that show he was in? The
Apprentice.
Fired. Yeah. I enjoyed the spectacle of that. I thought it was hilarious. But yeah, he knows how to communicate. I think he knows how to speak people where their pain points are. You know, if you're a businessman, that's, you know, capitalism thrives on sort of sowing in a perceived need, even though, you know, we don't need, you know, 3/4 of what we buy, but building up a need so we can fill it with a product and keep doing it. So, you know, he's had a career in that sort of space, and I think he's very good at that. One of the things, you know, how do people see him as nothing but a savior? I think it's a perfect storm in America. There's a pervasive religiousness. Even if you don't go to church, it's a part of the culture. You know, even if you've never been to church, you can still pick up on the vibes of what's going on. I think that's sort of culture means that the concept of a Messiah, a savior coming in, is actually quite a natural myth image to fill. He's giving people who felt powerless against, especially the rich, powerful, influential left. Imagine feeling no power against it. Imagine feeling that, especially if you're a conservative, with conservative values, you're like, oh, my way of life has been eroded. And suddenly, okay, we may not like him, but at least we're going to get our slice of earth back again,
So, I mean, as a religious guy, you know stuff that I don't know. So I'm going to ask you this question in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
Was Jesus the original socialist? Like,
I've got very, very definite, unapologetic ideas about that. Jesus was not a socialist; he was a communist.
I was going to go that far, but the problem is that's a loaded term these days.
Yeah. He's not a Marxist communist, as in late Marx kind of thing, but early Christianity and Jesus himself sell everything, have all things in common. We tidy it up, but Jesus did say, if you're rich, you're not going to make it into heaven.
Yeah.
It wasn't the love of riches that was the problem for Jesus. It wasn't that you loved riches and hated the poor. For Jesus, it was you are rich, and that makes sense because let's pick on the easy ones because none of us are billionaires. I think you can definitely defend the statement that you cannot be a billionaire without doing something awful to your fellow man. You have to take advantage. You have to destroy the environment. You have to pile on your toxic waste into some country that's not your own. You have to do some awful, inhumane things to be a billionaire. That's what Jesus was getting at on a smaller scale. And he said it. If you're rich, you won't be a part of the kingdom of God. Very different Jesus.
It's a perfect example, isn't it? I mean, look at someone like Elon Musk. Imagine having enough money to solve world hunger and not doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is sin of the highest degree, if you want to use religious language about it. So yeah, he was a communist. He was, see the difference between being a disciple of Jesus is emulating his life. And I don't think a large part of the extreme right Christian nationalism are disciples of Jesus whatsoever. They, in fact, have got a idol fashioned in some sort of way out of Jesus, and what they've got is the Jesus cult. They don't want to follow Jesus. They want to lift him up as an idol to worship and build a religion of control and compliance around it. They're not Christians. They're not disciples of Christ. They are part of the cult of Christ. Very different religions, very different ways of living. And I will say this: any sort of economy, politics that starts with anything other than, at the very center of it, the concern for the poor, the marginalized, and it doesn't have that as the centerpiece, cannot be called Christian. You can call it something else. You can call it, but if it's not that, it's not Christian. So a lot of what these far right Christians, I'm just going to be, some of them aren't all that far right either, basing their philosophy of economy and politics on, the sovereignty of the person and the nation state and law and order as the centerpiece, by default cannot be Christian, cannot be Jesus politics, because Jesus politics is centered on the person, the human being, and particularly the concern for the poor, the widows, the orphans. And so that's my rant for tonight.
I'm sure they would disagree with you though, Rich.
Oh, but they're wrong.
So what about, how did Jesus feel about King David? I mean, talking about wealth, there's plenty of wealthy people in the Bible. Did he view
Yeah.
King David as the same as someone who shouldn't be admired because of his wealth?
Oh, yeah, that's hard because I'd love to ask him about it. I don't think I don't know if he even talked about King David much, but David is it's a very troubled role model for a Christian to have. Polygamist, murderer, multiple murderer.
And of children.
What's that?
And not just of adults, of children.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, a bit of a
Bit of a dick.
Have you seen that movie, Conan the Barbarian? So we've got images. David seems to be this like rosy-cheeked, tubby sort of guy playing a harp on the battlefield, and he was Conan the Barbarian, is what he was. Not a role model
Crush
for
your
Christianity.
enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women.
Yeah, exactly. That's who he was. And a lot, and this is going to be controversial to some of my Christian friends, but a lot of what's written about David is David propaganda. It was well after this fact, and it was an apologetic to why David's our guy. You know, if you really understood it, it's David propaganda, and it's in the scriptures. And you've got a choice. You can go, we're on board with David propaganda as if it's God speaking, or we can go, wow, that's left there to really. Sometimes in the scriptures we see God, and sometimes we see ourselves, and especially what we can do, what power does to the downtrodden. It rewrites history for the rich and the powerful to be justified in the face of their awful behavior in the face of the poor and needy. So that's what I say.
Got some comments coming through, guys. So Trump, Fenton, in before Greg, I definitely did awful things to people due to the arrogance theism gave me. I was on God's mission, and the facts did not care about your feelings. Rich is nodding.
Me too, Fenton.
And then Greg, so Trump, Biden, and Harris, these are the best people the USA can find to lead their country. What does that tell you? I mean, look, it tells you a lot, because they have had some people to admire. I mean, how far a cry are we from the Kennedys and some of the great presidents, some of the amazing presidents? I mean, they have not produced a dud as bad. Bush Jr. was probably one of the worst. Bush Senior was a hell of a lot, but no one has gone even close. Which is why guys like Joe Biden scratching his head, going, "I don't know who you are. I've never heard talk like this from a president before." The fact that the man is 2 seconds away from being locked in a jail cell, and it makes no difference to the sheer lunacy of the way these people are allowed to just, oh my God, it's crazy.
Do you guys know? Do you know who Jon Stewart is?
Yes,
which one?
The host of The Daily Show in the US?
Yes.
If there was anyone that I see as being the best possible candidate for the US president, it's Jon Stewart. He's switched on, he's smart, he's funny, he's young, all the things that you want in a president.
All the things.
But I don't like Kamala Harris.
You what?
I know Greg has something to say about her. Is that the best that they can find? But what's wrong with Kamala Harris? I mean, she's a successful prosecutor, successful black woman who is doing very well for herself. I think she's a great candidate.
Well, you can hang shit on Trump. There's no question. Joe Biden is obviously past it, and he wasn't. He's if you go back and have a look at the early Joe Biden, he worked really hard and has got a great record as being a leader. Harris, her only crime, for want of another word, is being second to Joe and aboard a sinking ship, as it were. And it's pretty hard to separate yourself from that, but she's now coming to her fore. So I'm all for her. I can't see anything that isn't good about her. Another comment from Fenton, the best way to put It is the US electoral system, and history is a long story like many countries. Yeah. And the early Christians were definitely forming communist societies. Another good comment from Fenton. And unfortunately, this might be one for you, Rich. Unfortunately, each gospel writer had different goals. That makes interpreting each version of Jesus and the implications difficult for modern Christians. Absolutely, totally agree with that, Rich.
Yeah.
Just
A
before
bunch
you
of
go into it,
writings, 2,000 years old, it's going to be pretty hard.
yes, just
It's
before
not
you
easy.
go any further on that, Rich, can you tell me how you're bringing up those comments? Because this is a part of my new job. Where do I do that?
You just hover your mouse over the comment and tap it.
Look at that. Wow, look at that. We think that amazing. Okay.
And, I'm just going to say right on topic, I think, Jace, be careful. The power may go straight to his head.
What am I missing? Oh, there, right. I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Greg says Harris is a lunatic. Please explain.
Citation, Greg.
Give us some. You can't just say that without having some sort of reason. Why? What is her?
And a little cut together package on Fox News of Kamala laughing a lot is not saying that she's a lunatic. That's just a edited together package of her laughing.
Yeah,
sorry.
I mean,
I think I know what Greg's talking about.
Yeah, well, I don't give him a soundboard. Yes, no, I that is a huge sweeping statement, and I'd love to know what it's based upon. I mean, if she's a lunatic, I'm sure we'd all like to know. Not that it impacts us directly. We can't vote for who is going to become the next poor sucker to be called the president of the United States. But why?
You know what they say, Pete?
A lunatic?
If America sneezes, Australia catches a cold.
Right.
So it is important to us.
Well, it's not important to every country around the world. That is absolutely true. But it is very important to Australia because we are, whether we like it or not, the big brother that we need in case someone comes stepping on our property we don't want them to. I mean, It has been a love-hate relationship for a long, long time. My fear is that with the increased growth in China and the seeming instability, it scares me to think that this great America could, like all great nations before them, crumble and fall. Where does that leave us if that happens? I mean, not in its normal place. That's not likely to happen. But Trump scares the hell out of me because he is just a loose unit and he doesn't seem to give a shit. And he has access to the buttons that could quite easily destroy. And he's a big talker. I can beat anyone. I can talk to Putin. I can do everything.
Can we explore that for a second, Pete? That question about if that empire crumbles, what becomes of it? We have to look at the fact that the United States of America is precisely that, the United States of America. And so much like Australia, the states actually have really all the power. And so those individual states, they're either red or they're blue primarily. And so could it be that America devolves into two separate countries with the red states and the blue states? And what would that result in? Like, who gets control of what? It's a pretty scary thought. Who do we align ourselves with?
Yeah, and that may not be so crazy, JC. Just hearing about it, isn't there? Hasn't there just been a new film made based on the Confederate and the Yankees war or something? What's that about?
Well, I have seen it. It is a pretty scary view. I mean, essentially, the movie is about a group of journalists traveling through an America that is already ripped apart by a civil war, a modern civil war. So think of a parallel universe. You know, it's America today, but torn apart by civil war. It's an interesting premise. I don't think they explore it deeply enough because it's about the journalists at the end of the day rather than the situation. It's worth seeing for the horror. And there is genuine horror and terror when you come up against people that have no compunction at all in killing you or the people with you simply because you're not considered to be American enough. What is America? Well, if you're not white and if you're not, and you know, this has all the hallmarks of Nazi Germany. You know,
Yeah.
in the movie, one of the journalists is a Japanese guy, and he's killed almost immediately, regardless of the fact that he was born in America and has an American accent. He didn't look American. That's horrific, Pete. That is horrific.
Yeah, yeah. What's the name of the film? Do you remember?
It's called Civil War.
Civil War. Okay, I'll need to see that. If you were planning on it, you didn't hear anything about a Japanese journo. You just didn't happen. Jason's just making it up. Just spoiler alert. Hey, does anyone know? Because I haven't followed a lot, and this is sort of maybe potentially, I guess, off subject, but I think it's still fairly pertinent to what we're talking about. The 25-25 movement. You guys up
2025, yeah.
Sorry, 2025. I'm 25-25. That's a good song in the year 25-25. But yeah, so 2025. Shed some light if you know much about it. I heard a little bit, but not a lot.
It's a manifesto that basically Trump claims he knows nothing about, and yet it's a wish list for the Trump presidency. So it's a group basically put together by a fairly influential group called the Heritage Foundation, I think they're called. They have a wish list of things that they want. And
but
it's
aren't they
everything
also associated with Trump?
Loosely. So some of the people...
Okay.
Some of the people who are in the Heritage Foundation and Project 20, supporters of Project 2025 are people that have been associated with Trump or still associated with Trump.
Right.
He knows full well what it's all about. And part of having him as a dictator and granting him executive powers that go well beyond anything that the president today has. I mean, you know about that recent Supreme Court decision that has basically now said that whatever a president does in the course of his duties is legal by definition.
Yes.
If he wanted to send the CIA after Biden or now Kamala and kill her, if he did that in the execution of his presidential duties, that is perfectly legal now. Perfectly okay. There is something wrong with these people. Just as an example, though, they're talking about things like completely banning outright abortion under any circumstances. A 12-year-old girl could be raped. Yep. Nonetheless, you're having that child, little girl, one way or the other. It's to the point where if a woman miscarries, she could be done for murder, maybe manslaughter. But either way, it's a crime not to carry the baby to term. Horrific. They're banning things like contraception or, you know, the morning after pill, that kind of thing. They're talking about introducing and, in fact, forcing prayer back into schools. Christian prayer, though. The Ten Commandments, of course. Only, yeah, and that's it. You know, back to this whole idea about having a wall between the US and Mexico. Back to this insular idea of not wanting to have any kind of external focus around the world. You know, the way that Western countries very often lend a hand to countries that are, you know, doing it tough or an up-and-comers. None of that anymore. It's internally focused. We may even go back to Trump's original idea about no longer being a part of things like the UN. You know, there is just so many things in there that go not just external, but internal to the point of the handmaiden's tale becoming writ large. And that is incredibly scary. Pete, I am genuinely worried. This is not an existential fear. This is a real and tangible, the risk is upon us.
So he's an easy subject to talk about. So with Trump and talking about banning UN, and of course he got rid of, was the Paris
Accord,
Accord. Does he genuinely think that he is so smart that he has
yes,
or we don't know them? Look, it's probably a rhetorical question, but I'll put it out there anyway.
Dunning-Kruger.
Of course, 100%. He is what it was named for, I'm sure. Does he have the ability to play out the movie on any level whatsoever? You know, how does this end? With the wall and everything, he didn't achieve anything he wanted to achieve, and admittedly, it was a shocking time to be a leader of any country with COVID coming in and destroying so many millions of people. But is there any way, shape, or form that we can be optimistic about Mr. Trump doing something nice?
Give you one example of the hypocrisy of the man, Pete. So remember COVID? Remember that thing?
Oh, yeah.
So do you remember how many people were anti-vax and still are anti-vax?
Yes.
Trump doesn't know whether or not to claim the victory of being responsible for introducing the first of the vaccinations, because he'd love to claim responsibility for that success, but at the same time, all of his supporters hate vaccinations. So he's in this real bind at the moment. Do I claim that it was my success and ostracize a bunch of people, or do I let that one go and not take credit for it? It's hard to know when you're Trump, but then again, cognitive dissonance is his thing, so he can hold both thoughts at the same time.
That's right. Or just grab a bottle of bleach and just have it done with. I mean, that's
or shine a bright light inside your body.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear.
I was thinking about.
Go on, Richard. Go on. You've got the floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, I've got to get going in a minute, but I'll bring some of the believer vibes to this little piece. Some of the 2025 stuff. It really, there's the big chunk of that. I'm thinking, man, how do you get there? And it's like, well, part of it is being such a religious country. There's a few things going on. I know there's some very extreme parts of the Catholic Church that want to get back to a place where, which I didn't know. I didn't know that the Catholic Church had an official stance against democracy. They thought democracy was not a good idea. I'm putting it as a very sort of unnuanced statement, but generally true. There's a group of Catholic extremists that want to make it illegal to be anything but a Catholic, and roll back a lot of civil rights for non-Catholics, and Catholicism becoming a bit of a state religion. So there's that side of sort of authoritarian religiousness. But I can't but help but think that, and maybe Jace, looking out from the outside as an atheist, have scratching head, but having sort of the inside track to some of what's going on. Imagine if your view of God is pure power. So it's God is God because he's powerful, and whatever God does is right because God does it. It's a kind of belief about God, especially in the Puritan strand of things, that is quite strong in the New England sort of religious imagination. That kind of God, you have one of two reactions. You either, because that kind of God is the ultimate piece that's against your personal sovereignty.
That's the Old Testament God, isn't it? Not the New Testament God.
Well, it depends which sort of stream that you swim in religious imagination. But if that's the concept of God, you've got one of two choices. Is like, I'm out of here. I'm going to leave this thing and rebel against it. Or if you're going to stay in that, and that's your sort of conception of God, it's authoritarian. It's I'll do what I'm told because I'm told it. I don't have to think about it, because you can't think God's thoughts after him, because his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And we say something's good, but really, how would we know? Because we're just mere mortals. So we just have to. Faith is not a well-reasoned conclusion. It's literally just an act of the will to submit yourself to something. And that becomes very much in that framework you're talking about. There's no well thought out. It's just a will to power over other people with a hierarchy. I don't know who's at the top. Maybe God's at the top.
Absolutely hit the nail on the head.
Bang
on.
If God is, which is the old conception, if God is the good itself, like the New Testament, God is love, is the essence of what it is. That's a very different God. And although that whole framework does not work, because such a God is a God of all, Christians, non-Christians, atheists, if such a God does exist, he's the God of all and welcomes all and brings everybody in. And so I can't help but think that a big chunk of what drives it, even subconsciously, is a very twisted conception of a God of pure power that poisons everything, including stuff like you were telling us about. And yeah, I don't know. What do you do? I'll tell you this one last thing. I don't know, Jace, because I came from a sort of the Pentecostal happy clappy stream of tradition of Christianity. So a part of that is the prophetic. So the prophetic is everybody's supposed to be able to hear God's voice, and you get that sort of thing. But some people are more in tune with it, and some of them actually get called prophets. Now, unfortunately, when Trump was like on the very, very margins, he was like, everybody, Republican, Democrats, like, no way is Trump going to get in. No, that was the consensus. No way is Trump going to get nominated. He's on the outside. There's a few influential prophets in the charismatic stream that said God had told them that Trump would not only be nominated, he would get it, and he would be president. And people mocked it. They were like, you stupid Christians. Trump got in. Can you imagine the kind of impact in a community where that kind of prophetic
tithing would have gone through the roof?
Oh, it's like, see, now Trump for this, it's a given, it's a minority. Trump for them is not just a good idea. They've heard from God, from their prophets, and it bore out true against the naysayers. It's like this moment in history, this little quirk of history, this little accident of history that brings this thing into a very sharp focus for a group of people. Now, any thinking person would know that that's literally, if you're going to flip a coin, yes or no, sometimes it's going to be yes, sometimes it's going to be no. That kind of prophecy is a flip of the coin. And the fact that this all happened like that person prophesied has become such a stranglehold on the imagination of those kinds of people. And so you've got the angry God people who see a power in that kind of authoritarian rule. And then you've got the generally who see God as a more loving God, but they've got a prophecy now. And so you've got all of this undercurrent that to people on the outside, it's just insane. But when you're on the inside, it's so compelling. And I just feel so sorry for people trapped in it.
One step in addition to that, Rich, I see the Republicans and a lot of conservatives referring, even on Fox News, to the godless liberals, small L liberals. And so even if you're not a really, really staunch religious person, if you just have a belief in God and a belief in the Bible and that kind of thing, and you look at these godless liberals who are pushing things like, wokeness in regards to accepting transgender people and, the fact that pornography is freely available, that's what they want shut down. And so it doesn't matter if there's a couple of things in there they don't agree with.
Exactly.
It's sticking it to those godless liberals to make sure they can't make any more of those ridiculous decisions that's decimating the morality of our society.
And I think you've hit something there, which is very different to the politics we have. Like, our politics seems to be political. For them, politics is like, it's a heaven or hell kind of eternal sort of decision. It's like, whoa, that's a whole nother, like, your vote is not just like who's president. It's like where you're going to spend eternity now. It's like, that's a lot of pressure on a voter.
And they've tied patriotism to it.
It's the influence
of Christian nationalism now is linked to patriotism, which is one of the big things that they're taught from a very early age, being patriotic to the country. So now there's a connection between being patriotic, which is the right thing to do, and Christian nationalism, which is why you can see it growing like a cancer within their society.
Yeah,
and we know patriotism and Christian and nationalism are two different things. You can be a patriot without being a nationalist.
And what Rich was talking about is the Pentecostal, the hearing people talking about prophecy and stuff. It might not sound like much, but when you're in it, man, it is just, you have power.
And from the
You are
outside, it's
hearing-
sheer insanity.
Oh my God, absolutely. But you can't see that because the people on the outside are wrong. And you are right, because you can hear from God. Someone has prophesied, someone confirmed the prophecy. It's real, it's true, it spreads there, and then suddenly you are, I'm special. I'm you don't say that, but you know that you have some connection that people just don't have. And I cannot imagine. I'm talking about a small church of 100 people. You imagine it in the churches in America, where you're talking about tens of thousands of people. This thing just goes mental. And you're right. And everyone else, if you object, doesn't matter. You object to it. Of course you're going to object. You know why you're going to object? Because God said you would object. So therefore, that makes it even right again. And you can't ever get me. You can't ever prove me wrong. I'm right.
It makes me wonder sometimes. Fenton's just made a very good point. And it stands in complete defiance of what you've just said. So somebody that is a staunch Christian believer who believes in doing all the right things, or at least wants to be seen to be believing in all the right things. And yet, as Fenton mentions, with the Republican National Convention in town, it actually crashed a lot of the gay meetup sites because they were overloaded with Republicans looking for hookups. How does that, where is the dissonance there as well? How can they be gay and go off and have a great time, a great gay time, and yet that does not fit within their set of beliefs?
Man, it's the wonderful hypocrisy of Christianity. And I'm not bagging Christianity per se by saying that. Rich and I know exactly who you're talking about, know who Fenton's talking about. The irony is palpable. I mean, yeah.
Well, for me, I have to bring my time with you, awesome gents, to a close. I know this was a fascinating subject for me, but I'll say my goodbyes and leave you to finish the night together. And thanks, Fenton. Thanks, Greg. Great chat so far. And thanks, Rowie. Thanks, Jace.
Thank you, mate. Can you send in the next audition, whoever that's going to be filling in for you? We got someone.
Yeah, we need to get some more talent here. Well, we need to get some talent, maybe.
We need to get talent. You don't need to put a word before it. Good on you, Rich. Thanks, mate. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Brilliant chat.
Yeah, mate.
See ya.
Well, there you go. Oh, it's just you and me, mate.
And then there were two.
And then Fenton and Greg, of course. They're there as well.
Of course, mate. Realistically, what could go wrong?
Well, I reckon one day we should get at least Greg or Fenton to appear on the show, seeing that we've got the technology to do it.
We have spoken about that. Yeah, we want to actually make it more interactive. We don't have to necessarily see them. If you've met my brother, you know what I meant by that. But no,
right.
It would be good to see. But we can certainly hear. What is that little thing? Have a
g'day, maybe. Oh, but g'day, mate.
Have a g'day, mate. Look at the way he spelled it.
G'day.
It matters not. It's
you go.
G'day. We just for the record, Fenton, not that it matters. We spell it generally G-I-D-D-A-Y. G'day, mate.
Or G''D-A-Y. G'day.
Yes, yeah, G''D-A-Y. Yeah, g'day. Either way, it says g'day. So g'day to you, mate. And mate doesn't have a Y in it either, by the way. It's just M-A-T.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm being particularly.
If you spell it like that, it's matey, and that's not a good thing.
That's right.
That's what you call when you've got the son of a mate. That is the little matey.
Yeah, little matey. I often wonder about how Americans see the stereotypical Aussie bloke. Is if everyone's going around, "G'day, mate. G'day, mate. G'day, mate." It's not. It's not.
Their whole
true.
perception of Australians is based on either Paul bloody Hogan or Hugh. What's his name?
Hugh,
the Greatest Showman. What's his name? Hugh.
Oh, yes,
West Australian guy.
Yes. I can't.
Anyway, that guy.
The Wolverine.
Yeah, Wolverine. He's become very American himself.
The guy who ask my wife, and she'll tell you that I can never ever remember his name. Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway.
So look, if we got another roughly 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how interested we all are in continuing on with this. So if you've got a question or a comment, we want to turn this over to you, and I want you to drive what it is you want to talk about. We have been talking tonight about a statement that Voltaire mentioned. And you know what's really interesting about Voltaire, apart from the fact that he's a Frenchman, he lived to 83 years old. In the 17th century, that would have to be like mental. In 1778, I think he was either born or he died. I can't remember. How many people back then would have lived to 83? That's still a good age in 2024.
Because you wouldn't need, like, there's no drugs, there's no hygiene.
No.
Amazing.
No, incredible.
What just happened then? I used my fingers and something came up on the screen.
No, I have the power apparently, but I didn't do it on purpose. You said weird. Drugs, and it kind of went wild.
Ah! I didn't do that, Pete. I don't know how that happened.
I'm not doing it either. My hands haven't left my arms.
How bizarre.
Yeah, I know, right? I thought you were doing that.
I didn't do that. Look, my hands are here, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not, where are my hands? There. So,
right.
Not doing anything.
Do that and see what happens.
Is it going to happen?
No. It must be geezers.
It must be automatic. Does it work for you?
What did you do? This.
Thumbs up, both of them. No.
Well, you've got the green screen. I don't. My screen is real. Yours is fake. Fenton, man, I've just recently learned how to type Glasgow slang. My channel to Australian culture is...
I did a thing, and boy. These are obviously content creators.
I did. Oh, okay. So you type how to type Glasgow slang. Well, the first thing you want to say, it's not slang, but you want to say, see you, Jimmy.
That's right. Okay, the new. That's not the way you make porridge.
You can talk like you can talk like, I'm Billy Connolly or something like that. That's shocking. Thanks for indulging.
Watch it, why can't I take it down the dingle and look if I can block off? Anyway, I was just thinking, Voltaire, did you know that is not his real name? That was a nom de plume.
Yes,
yes,
it was a fake name. Yes, I saw that. His
Francois Marie Arouet.
Way too hard to try and pronounce. It was very
You're
much
take the piss, right?
Typically French. You're gonna take the piss. The piss. You're gonna take the piss.
Did you know though? Did you know Voltaire?
You've been talking to Fenton, seriously, mate.
You know Voltaire wrote more than 2,000 books.
No,
he was prolific.
He was
absolutely prolific. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of writing.
If we don't get any more comments worth talking about, and we certainly hope we do from Fenton, Greg, whoever's out there who hasn't perhaps put up your hand and had a chat with us, whilst we're waiting, I wanted to ask you, in the time that you've been on the podcast, because I knew Rich was disappearing at 9 o'clock, I wanted to ask you what things about you have you changed, good, bad, or otherwise. After hearing the stories, and you're quite privy to listening to guys like Rich and Luke, because they are not your typical Christians whatsoever, as you've obviously come to realize. But have you changed your views, your mind, your thoughts about whether there's a God, the character of Jesus, anything like that? No, it's still
not like that. That said, I think the one difference is I've generated a little bit more empathy for people who are true believers, and a little bit more anger towards those who are hypocritical about it. Yeah. And so when I see someone like Luke or Rich who has a deep and abiding, I don't know what to call it, it's a love for the story, for the God that they feel, that isn't a God that, has a human shape. I get that, and I understand why they need that and want that and what it means to them and how it can help them in their lives. And I think I mentioned quite a few weeks ago now that in some regards, I actually am a little bit jealous of the fact that they have that it's not a satisfaction, but that
Comfort,
knowledge,
okay.
comfort that there is something else that's there, and that there's more after they die. I stand firm and resolute in my belief that this is all I have, and that I need to make the most of it, and that when I'm gone, I'm gone. I take satisfaction in that.
I think Pascal's wager is an important thing, because we don't know. Like, if they knew 100% conclusively that you do go to heaven if you tick certain boxes, or if you don't tick any boxes at all, you still go to heaven. If you knew that, I think you'd have a very different attitude toward each other and to life on earth. But
I question that though, Pete. Because honestly, if you believe that, if you genuinely believe that heaven existed, 100%,
yeah,
why would you choose to stay here?
But the question is there anyone who has a 100% belief? I'd have to answer that from my perspective and be honest and say, yes, I would like to think that I believed 100%, but in the background behind here was always that, really, 100%?
So get out of here now. End it now. Go to heaven.
But you're not.
Why on earth are you in the queue?
Because
why stand in the queue when you can just jump the queue?
Because killing yourself is a sin.
Is it?
It's a mortal sin. Absolutely.
Does it say that in the Bible?
Yes, it does.
Or does it say killing someone is
taking one's life? I'd have to refer to it, but certainly that was my understanding that suicide is a sin, and if you kill yourself,
but all sins are forgiven for a true believer, Pete.
Well, it might be complete and utter bullshit that I believe, but that's what I was under the impression, that as a believer, suicide was not an option.
But if you're a true believer and you suicided, then surely you could ask for forgiveness when you get there.
Yes. This is the paradoxical life of a believer. Oh, it's so confusing. But I think you're very lucky to be exposed to the kind of religion or Christianity or faith that Luke and Rich subscribe to. But what I wanted to also ask you is, prior to coming on, that you knew you were coming on to chat with another atheist and myself and a couple of Christians, who do you think you were going to meet? What were Rich and Luke like in your mind?
Here's the challenge that I've got, and I'll call him a good mate. He continues to be a good mate, even though he is absolutely, excuse the language, Pete, absolutely fucking crazy. He is nuts, right? He is a lovely guy. I genuinely like him. I like most things about him. I like his wife. I like his kids. I like his work ethic. For me to stay friends with someone, they've got to have certain qualities. He is absolutely balmy, right? He's one of these Christians. He's a part of a little cult. They don't meet in the church. They're a fellowship that meets in each other's houses. There's only about 30 or 40 of them.
Right.
They believe that the Bible is the literal word of God. Literal.
Yes.
Everything in the Bible, word for word, is the absolute truth. Now, we've had many a conversation late into the night, drunken conversations where we are laying it on the line with each other.
Yep.
And he feels sorry for me because he knows I'm going to hell. And I feel sorry for him because it affects every part of his life in what I believe to be a truly negative kind of way.
Wow.
He suffers major depression. And this belief structure is a significant part of why. It affects him so much, it affects his relationships. It's not working in a positive way. And the problem here is that he is a super intelligent guy. And as a result, he has the ability to rationalize all of the irrationality of it. And no matter what I say to him, he has a way of coming back, even though it doesn't make sense. I remember having a conversation with him about 10 years ago, and he said to me at the time, because I remember it clearly, if you truly want to experience God, you have to truly open your heart and invite God in. Genuinely, sincerely, not faking it. You have to open yourself to the idea.
Which you can't do.
Well, I have to admit there were moments when I did sort of think maybe I should try that. Maybe it would be for the best.
Yeah.
We all have these moments of what I would call weakness. But no, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it was never going to happen. But more recently, about 6 months ago, he came to visit me here down in Albany, or near Albany, and we had the same conversation. His perspective has changed. Now, from the get-go, God knows who he has chosen. And unless you're one of the chosen ones, it doesn't matter what you do. You can try and accept Jesus into your heart. It's almost a Calvinist perspective on the way it's done. It's almost a Jewish perspective on the way it's done. If you're not part of the 12 tribes, dude, forget about it. And to me, that's not my understanding of Christianity or the Bible, which essentially says that God loves all of us. And as long as we accept and have our belief and our faith, then ultimately the vast majority of us are going to be accepted into the kingdom of heaven anyway. That's what I understand. And I know each religion and each chapter have their own different perspectives on that. But as I understand it, the vast majority of Christians overall believe that most good people are going to end up in heaven. But that's not his perspective. And it doesn't matter that, as I've mentioned to you many times in the past, I like to think that I'm a Christian with all the Christian values, but without the spirituality. Nonetheless, even though I live my life doing good deeds for no other reason than I want to do good deeds, not to try and gain acceptance to heaven, I am still going to hell. And that to me just seems like the weirdest perspective, because what you're saying to people is you might as well be bad and evil and enjoy yourself while you're here. Because, dude, at the end of it, you're condemned to hell forever. It's not a good way to teach people how to be good.
No, it's really not. And unfortunately, there's no one single way to do this, to understand this, it is, look, having been through it for 25 years.
Did it make you a better person, Pete?
Didn't change me in the slightest. I was a good person before.
Right.
If someone was at,
but did it make you a worse person?
Yes.
When you were in the religion, did it make you a worse person?
Yes. Yeah, as far as tolerance for people and not accepting their differences, absolutely it made me worse.
Right.
It didn't make me the slightest bit better. I couldn't have been any better from what I was before. If I was at a paying, go out of Coles or Woolies or whatever, and someone didn't have any money, bang, here it is. I'll pay. Go for it.
Bang,
just what I did. Didn't even have to think about it. Can't afford it, but I'll do it anyway. That didn't change when I became a Christian. It didn't change when I stopped being a Christian. It didn't change who I was, but it certainly made me, I wouldn't say worse is probably not the right word. It didn't make me worse. It did make me
less tolerant. Less tolerant is worse.
Yeah, but not, they weren't things that generated within me. That were things that generated within the religion that I was a part of, the Christianity that I was a part of. That made me feel, or made me less tolerant toward other people. You shouldn't go with them because they're sinners. They'll drag you back into your horrible life that you had before, kind of thing.
Or alternatively, you could help them move forward.
Yes, that was your job to do that, of course. It was a part of your role, is to make sure that you tried to bring people into the flock, as it were. And eventually, most people would tell you to flock off, but some people would then allow you to do it. But no, it didn't make me the slightest bit better. But interesting talking about your mate. I find that incredibly tolerant of you to be able to have a friend like would you that's probably the tolerance that he may not, although he obviously shares it with you, depending on what his ultimatum is his ultimate desire that you would be like him?
No, because I can't be like him. Regardless, I've not been selected. I'm not one of the chosen ones. And that's why you're right. I don't
Then
really
why is he
understand,
befriending you?
other than it being an intellectual exercise, I don't understand what he's doing.
Well, it's possible, in spite of who you are, he might actually like you.
It's funny because, like with Rich and with Luke, saying that we have a lot of things in common. Damien, I shouldn't use his name. We do have a lot of things in common. And, one of those things, from my perspective, is a 3-word sentence that I've lived with my whole life. I've got all these little things that I try to live up to. And it's those who can, should. And so that's around things like charity and empathy and support. It's, if you're in a position to be able to help someone, then you should. And I'm not saying that you should do charity to the expense of putting yourself in a hole. What you do is, they say charity begins at home. So as soon as you are on a footing where you are comfortable, then you have a responsibility to pull the others up behind you. And that's what we should all be doing. And regardless of whether or not we want to be successful ourselves, part of the enjoyment of life is helping other people and seeing them succeed as a result. And so that is not a totally selfless act, Pete. You're doing it because it makes you feel better. And because, and so I know it sounds really reasonably shallow, but to be able to reach out to people and assist them, and whether it's mentoring, which I do for a couple of people, or whether it's, having a World Vision kind of sponsored child or something like that, whichever way you go about it, if you have the ability to help, you should. And to me, that's what Australian society is all about. The fair go, helping your mate out. Even the Anzac tradition, you pull your mate along. You do not leave anyone behind. Medicare, as far as I'm concerned, our social security system is all about that. It's all about making sure that we share the wealth, that we share what we have. And this is why the American mentality of independence and doing it alone, to me, is abhorrent. It's a horrible way of living, and it's a horrible way of looking at your fellow man. It's not a competition. This is not a zero-sum game. We need to help each other out, because one day they might help you out. Right? It's a slow walk to the top. It's a rapid fall to the bottom.
Well, I think, you've encapsulated the Australian spirit and why Australia is such a great place. It was the famous South African author, whose name has just disappeared, Bryce Courtney.
Yes.
Who wrote
The Power of One.
Yes, who wrote this, The Power of One, who wrote of Australia. One of the reasons why Australia is so unique is that it was never, ever meant to be a country. It was a dumping ground for English convicts. That's what it was set up for. That's where they discovered this, right away from England, get as far away as you can to this godforsaken country, which is hot and dry. That's what it's going to be. And out of that, considering how long ago or how short time ago it was, Captain Cook, we won't get into the nasty bits of that. Was it 1778, around there or something? Look who we're 2024, and look who we are. And he said Australia's the most unique country because it was never meant to be a country. And look, and out of that, it's what we've grown into. And we are, and I'm not patting ourselves on the shoulders and bragging about who we are, but that is why we are who we are, which is different from many other countries.
But we have this cancerous influence of the US.
Yep.
There's so much about the US that I love, so much. But there's so much of their culture and their society which is detrimental to the Australian way of life.
Yep.
And it works against us. And we look to America to be the leader, the thought leader, if you want to call it that. Our technology comes from there. Our entertainment comes to them. A lot of our news comes from there. There's so much of America that we take. but
Of
I
course.
just wish that we would push back on a lot of it as well.
Well, we filter a lot of the crap out, which is good. But a couple of comments from Fenton as we're getting. What is the time? 20 to 10. I don't know what your time is there in California. Fenton says they say your soul journey is God's property. I don't remember where that is in the Bible. I don't think it is. And another comment, given that the majority of Christians today are non-denominational and how people like Jordan Peterson are trying to reframe theology, where do you guys see Christianity going into the future? Jordan Peterson's an interesting one for me, Fenton. I've been watching a lot of his stuff up until recently when I decided that exactly your observation, trying to reframe theology. And I've seen him have debates with Sam Harris and what's the guy from the Atheist movement? Can't think of his name, and all I ended up with out of listening to him, it was total confusion about his reframing, as it were, of theology. I really am totally confused about. And the problem with Jordan is he tries to blind everyone with his intellectual commentary and terminology.
What do you say? You can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with bullshit.
Correct. And it's like, mate, okay, you're intelligent, you're smart, you're articulate. I get that, but can you say something that we actually can wrap our heads around and try and understand? So where I see Christianity going into the future, wow, that is a that is a huge question to ask. Matt Dillhunter, yes, correct. That's who I was trying to think of. Talking to Jordan Pitch, which I thought when I first saw that, I thought, Matt, you're going to get chewed up and spat out big time, because Matt is not in the same category as Jordan Peterson, and only someone like Sam Harris can blind him with the equal amount of bullshit coming from Jordan back from Sam Harris. But Christianity going into the future, I really, I think it will eventually burn out, because enough people will become intelligent and aware enough to understand why there is such a thing as Christianity, why there is such a thing as faith, why it's developed into what it has developed into. And more people around the world, the amount of church leaders and pastors and priests who are just going, you know what, this is just all rubbish. I don't buy this anymore. I'm out. And then they check out and they don't have anything to do with it. I think it will eventually die out, certainly not in my lifetime, not in any of our lifetimes, and God knows how long it will take. But I think it will get to the point where human beings develop such a degree of intelligence and awareness that they will be convinced that you simply cannot make this work. It is clearly a man-made religion. You can't go back and say, in the beginning, people started to create gods to explain everything that they didn't know. When they got to the point through science that they could explain just about everything, it stopped. The only thing they couldn't explain was God. And that's why the existence of God is so real in so many people's minds. I mean, think about it. I mean, if you're honest and true, ask yourself, how often do your prayers work? How often does the thing work out that you've been told would work out according to the scriptures? You just have to be honest and true to yourself. And it's not a bad thing to do that. It's actually a really good thing, because at the end, you may come up with something that is far better than what you currently believe. That is my journey. I spent 25 years believing in this stuff. And it got to the point where I had love in my life that I didn't have before. That's why I needed God. My belief in God saved me. I have no question about that. My life was a mess.
Yeah,
I believed in God, and it got me out of where I was. But then when I found love through my wife and my children, that love was replaced in my heart and didn't need it. The day after, bang, God, the awareness of God disappeared. Gone. I didn't ask it. I didn't want it to happen. It just disappeared. And I was left going, okay, so it's just me now. And it was scary and it was horrible and I didn't want it, but that was the reality. I could not bring back a God who didn't want to or wasn't there. It didn't exist. I couldn't. Nothing happened. It was just Gonski. And I've been totally happy for the last 12, 13 years, not having to have something to believe in, not having a church to make me feel guilty about being a sinner and being told I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. it's really just a ego soul destroying trip where you're just told constantly about how bad you are. And people are going to go, our church is not like that. I'd find that very hard to believe.
Well, that is a good point, though, Pete, because there are obviously many different flavors of Christianity. So that question, sort of, we're not really treating Christianity as a complete block, because I'm sure that there's some parts of Christianity that are decreasing much more rapidly than others.
Correct,
but
yes.
Rather than just sort of observing what's going on, if we would actually look at the real numbers, look at the statistics in the census that we have every 4 years or so, and that has demonstrated that year on year since the 60s, Christianity is declining at a very, very rapid rate, very rapid. Do you know what, between the last two censuses, what the fastest growing religion in Australia is?
I don't know.
Jedi.
Jedi. Are you serious?
Absolutely, and it's people taking the piss. It's people demonstrating how they feel about being asked about what their religion is. You know, if you're an atheist, and you know what, Rich called me an atheist earlier on tonight, and I have to admit I struggle with that term because it's almost a pejorative term. It's almost there's so much emotional baggage attached to it. It's a hateful kind of word. Someone's actually saying, "You're a bloody atheist, you dirty atheist."
Jeez.
I'm a non-believer.
He doesn't mean it, Rich, if you're listening.
No, I know he didn't mean it like that. Absolutely, he didn't. I mean, it's the right word. But the way I look at it is that I'm a non-believer. Right? An unbeliever, if you want.
Yep. I totally agree. I hate
a better word than unbeliever. Because unbeliever almost says that you are disagreeing.
You know of something, but you choose not to believe in it.
I have an absence of belief.
Yes.
Not a denial of belief.
Yep. No, no one can prove that God doesn't exist, and I get that. I hate calling myself an atheist for exactly the same reason, Jay. So I am unconvinced due to the lack of evidence. Now, my statement in that is very different from yours because I did believe, whereas you've never believed. And so it's a different statement, as it were. Although the words might sound the same, the meaning, I think, is different. I was convinced. I'm no longer convinced. God would know what it would take to convince me. Otherwise, I've invited him to do that. I've seen or heard nothing. And until that happens, I'm not convinced, with the lack of evidence, that there's enough to believe that there is a God, that God exists. I'm not there. Simple.
I can't see, if there is a God, I can't see that God would have given us the intelligence to ask the question and expect us to have blind faith. The two just don't marry up to me. Why would he give us the ability and the intelligence and the wisdom, the ability to learn and to study and research, and all of the things that we require in good science? Why would he give us all of that and then expect us to exhibit blind faith?
Okay, so
it defies belief.
Now, my question to that often is when I say that, and I agree entirely. I say that too. And then there's a little voice in the back of my head going, are you just saying that because you don't know God, and that is exactly what you would say? So,
well, of course.
So there's this cyclical thing that keeps coming back going, are we only ever not believing because we don't know what we're talking about, so this is the only thing left to grab?
This is the American argument, Pete. You're smart, so you're going to hell.
Yeah. Look, that plays with my head, the heaven and hell thing, because that was a part of my life for 25 years.
Yeah,
there is
it would be. I understand you can't walk away from that.
Oh my God, it's just it's horrendous, and it is so not real. When you come out the other side and dust off all of the junk and the crap and the stuff that goes with it, and you look around and go, that was not real. That was a weird trip.
Do you remember, like, in the first few episodes that I was on of this particular podcast, I used to say to you, I have no issue with religion, whether it be personal or organized, as long as it makes people better. The moment that it doesn't make people better, and in other words, it causes them to doubt themselves, to think that they're evil, to feel guilt, to do things that are irrational and unfair and lack justice, whether it be going to war over stupid discrepancies between your book and my book. All of those things, why religion for me is a bad thing. And I say to people, if you have a personal relationship with your God, that's terrific. If you feel that, that's great. And it's making you a better person. It's giving you love and warmth and empathy and terrific. Terrific. But the moment that it starts being detrimental to you or the people around you, I've got a problem with it.
Yep. Look, I have no problem about people believing in faith. Fill your boots. Believe in whatever you want to believe in. If because what my belief in God saved me. People always say, "Oh, the only reason why you turn to God because your life was a mess." Damn straight, I turned to God because my life was a mess. Because I needed that shit, and I got it, and it helped me through.
But that also says a lot, doesn't it? It says a lot about what God is, or what God is to people.
Exactly.
Not what God is, but what your perception of what God should be.
Help me.
You're reaching out.
Yes, of course. And it is a perfectly normal thing to do.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of cool. And I have no qualms with people wanting to do that. I have no dramas. Just don't on a Sunday morning come around and knock on my door trying to sell me some bullshit when it's a Sunday.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to relax and unwind and you come around uninvited and knock on my door and try and convince me. And I've seen them before a million times. They're very clever. We won't interrupt. We just leave you with this little booklet. And I felt like saying to the last lot that came around last weekend, going, "You've been doing this for as long as I can remember, 34 years. Have you got a better booklet? This one really sucks. This is not going to convince me of anything.
Come in. We need to have this conversation."
They won't.
It's look, I find it terribly frustrating that it is something that could better humanity, even if there is no God, even if there is no spirituality or Mother Nature or the universe or whatever else you want to call it, even if none of that exists. The very teachings of Christianity should be making all of us, humanity and individually, better people who are more capable of living together, who are more capable of sharing the wealth, pulling each other along, helping each other out, supporting each other, all of these things. No more crimes against each other, no more rape and murder and violence and all these horrible things, stealing, all the values that we want, that Christianity teaches. If we could just bloody well live up to them, especially the believers, especially them.
Yeah.
If they could just live up to them, the world would be such a better place. But no, they can't. They don't. It's horrible.
Look, I'm a firm believer it's not possible. We're an evolving species.
Some of us are more evolved than others, Pete.
Absolutely, mate, 100%. And it's a slight on humanity at all. Is you weren't with us, I don't think, when we did the episode where imagine you're an alien looking down on Earth. Did you do that one?
No.
So I got it. The guys imagine they're an alien looking down on Earth, and you could see every single solitary aspect of humanity, everything, every single solitary thing, and you had to look at it and report on it as an alien to take back to your leader. And you notice that there were people who seemed to be, praying or acknowledging something in the sky and asking for these things, and nothing was happening. And you packaged it all together and went back to the leader, and they said, "What have you found? Does this look like a planet that is controlled or in charge of by a beautiful, loving God who is all powerful and all loving? And is that what Earth looks like?" And they're going, "Oh, no, it doesn't look like that at all. What does it look like?" Well, it looks like a complete and utter mess. If you go back and look at all of the things happening in the one place at the one time, it's just complete chaos.
So I can imagine the aliens right now. They're reporting back to Q. They're saying they've got this amazing thing called television, right, where they show pictures through the air. And on this thing, they're quite happy to show pictures of people killing each other in really horrible ways, but they're not allowed to show pictures of people making babies together because that's considered wrong. Even though it's how you make the species continue, you can stab someone, but you can't stab someone. You know, it defies belief, right? Even worse than that, in Victorian times, well, there's still a little bit of it today as well, someone can get down on their knees and pray to a non-existent entity, and that's considered respectful and good. But someone cannot grab their own genitalia and play with it. That's bad, right? You can't make yourself feel good. That's wrong. That's evil. That's naughty. But praying to something that doesn't exist, that's okay. So lunacy is okay.
Yeah.
Making yourself feel nice, that's bad.
If you've just joined us, welcome. This is the R-rated section of the an atheist believer and a pastor walk into a bar. But look, you're 100% correct. I mean, and that is what the whole point of the exercise of the alien looking down at and making a simple choice. Is this a place where there is, you know, love and freedom and acceptance and encouragement and all of the good things that your God is, and them saying, well, no, it's not.
But are they the good things, Pete? By whose measure are they the good things?
Oh, well, they witness the good, but they also witness the bad. And then you say to yourself, well, hang on a minute, is this God a God of good and bad? Well, no, it's a God of good. Well, then why is it only, you know, all sorts of things that are happening?
So if we look at the animal kingdom,
freedom.
If we look at the animal kingdom, so we look at lions as an example.
Yep.
Do they practice good things? Do they share? No.
Oh,
no.
Yes.
A successful lion pride kills other lions, kills some of the cubs that, you know, are painful or get in the way. The values of life, I think, differ from species to species. And what we consider good ain't necessarily the most successful strategy for the continuation of the species. Or is it? Because you look at the higher primates, and they all exhibit a lot of the social skills that we as humans also exhibit. The caring for each other, preening each other, all of that kind of thing. So for an alien race who is so much more advanced than us, like we consider ourselves so much more advanced than the apes, when they look at us, the values that we're exhibiting today, is there a difference between what they consider good and what we consider good? We can't even think about how advanced they are. The apes can't think about what humans think. No. How can we think about what aliens think?
We can only work with what we've got, for who we are and who the apes are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a dichotomy. Is that the right word to?
Yeah. But it's conjecture, isn't it? But for an ape, what's good? Sharing your food. Here, have half my banana. It's like
you're talking about the difference between dogs and cats here.
Yeah.
Where dogs will share, cats never will. We don't.
Right.
We don't like cats.
But is either of those things good?
Don't know. Subjective. Don't know.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, isn't it? I mean, you look at Americans, what they consider good in owning a gun. That's good. It's in the Constitution. It's their constitutional right to bear arms. So it's a good thing. But over here, after what happened in Tasmania, we had a gun buyback. We all think that was good. Not if you're an American.
What I find amazing, I'd like to find out what you think about this. There's roughly 300 million.
Oh, you've gone silent, Rowie. You've disappeared on me. There we go. You're back.
My mute came on. So I was going to say there's roughly 350 guns in America, 300 million Americans. How many people, and I'm sure you don't know this off the top of your head, it'd be good if you did, but wouldn't be hard to find out of the 350 million, and don't jump in anyone say my figures are out, because it's roughly close, 300 million Americans, 350 million guns. How many of the 300 Americans don't have guns at all because they are against them, I wonder? And if there's a lot, that would mean the 350 million guns, which is greater than the population, means people have got multiple guns, and we know that some of them
they do. I don't know if you know what the statistics are even in Western Australia, Pete, but I was talking to Paul Omadai fairly recently. The breakdown or the statistics of gun ownership in Western Australia is absolutely terrifying. On average, there are 2 guns per street in Western Australia.
What?
How's that for a statistic that blows your mind? And that's because so many people here with a gun license own multiple weapons. And they don't just have multiple rifles. They'll have a 22, they'll have a 357, they'll have a shotgun. Once you've got your gun license, under the current laws, you can have as many weapons as you like. The laws have recently changed, and by this time next year, you will virtually, it's not exact, but you will virtually have to have a license for each type of weapon that you've got.
So now license, and you can have as many guns as you want under that one license.
Correct. Yep.
I did not know that. Funny thing is, one license per gun.
No. And the license is pretty much for life, unless you get, unless they establish that you're mentally unwell. That license is pretty much indefinite. Even if you got the license because you're living on a farm and you're using it for exterminating livestock or vermin or whatever else, and you then sell that farm and move to the city, you are still entitled to keep those firearms. They're yours.
That's crazy.
However, things are changing, and the farmers are all very upset about it. Loads of people are upset about it. They're now starting to say, on an annual basis, you'll have to have a mental health check. But I think they're going to find that very difficult to do, because what psychologist is going to go, yeah, you're mentally healthy. Then 3 months down the track, you go and shoot up some shopping center. Is that psychologist then culpable? Don't know. Maybe, perhaps, possibly. Yeah. And should you be able to keep your weapons if you no longer require them because you're no longer on a farm? There's so many questions. And look, I know a farmer down here who is absolutely ropeable about having weapons taken away from them because they're not even offering a buyback. They're simply saying, you're not allowed to have them anymore. Bring them in. So some of these weapons are worth thousands of dollars each.
Well, that's what Fenton's just put on, saying, mate, most all gun owners, I'm assuming in America, he knows, have collections.
Yep.
Of guns.
And I'm not sure the law is different from state to state over there, obviously.
You know,
some states open carry, and that scares me. It's like, if only Trump had a gun and he could have fired back. More guns are the answer.
It's like the cowboy days in some of the states in America. It's just
if everybody in the crowd had a gun, they all could have shot back at the sniper.
Would you remember that was his answer, the solution to when there was about 3 or 4 school massacres? He suggested all the teachers should have a gun. Defend.
Pete, I was watching something recently that absolutely horrified me when it comes to primary school. Now, I've got 4 kids. They're all adults now. They've been through the schooling system. The idea that a shooter could have got into any of their schools at any time and my kids' lives were at risk, that terrifies me. I saw it's still my mind is thinking about this. They were selling backpacks for kids that were bulletproof. That was their solution to the gun problem in schools. Give the kids bulletproof backpacks so that they can hide behind them when a shooter comes.
No, my God. Do you know
what is wrong with their heads?
I've got something that can't top what I'm going to say. In some supermarkets in America now, there's ammunition, like
vending machines
where you can go and buy your bullets on the back of the greatest problem in the world as far as gun control goes. That's what they thought. This would be a great idea. We can make some money out of this. Let's have a vending machine And I'm assuming you have to show some degree of ID or license, or perhaps not. And you can buy your bullets at the vending machine. Don't have to talk. Stick off you go. Kids can go in there and buy this stuff. That
Pete, I don't know.
Insanity.
Were you in Perth in the early 80s?
Yep.
Kmart in the sports section used to sell firearms.
I don't remember that really well.
Rifles, ammunition, the whole lot, in store in a Kmart. I mean, they used to have cafeterias as well. All the good stuff's gone.
Was that prior to the Tasmanian massacre?
Yes,
by Brian?
well prior. Yes.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Look, I've often said Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms. Yeah. But that was written by the founders at a time when arms were basically muskets. So if you wanted to reload your weapon, it would take a good 2 or 3 minutes between shots.
Yep.
That made them a little bit safer. They also didn't shoot very far and they weren't very accurate. These days, we're talking about semi-automatic weapons that are extremely accurate and extremely lethal. However, there is nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to be able to buy ammunition. Correct. So have your guns, fellas, but we're banning ammunition.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
When they make me king of the world, it'll all be fixed, Peter.
There's a little thing called a black market, which I think you can buy bullets on. I'm not sure. But
I'm sure you can, but you get caught with ammunition, you're going to prison, fella.
Yeah. Yeah. Mate, I think we might wrap it up.
It's worth a lot of money. You can keep it. Put it on the wall.
We've well and truly gone over time. It's just gone 10 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time. An atheist, a believer, and a pastor walk into a bar is the name of this podcast. Available as soon as we finish on Facebook, available, of course, right now because it's live on YouTube. I think we should wrap it up, mate.
I think so too. And I noticed that someone's been turning much of the podcast into shorts as well on YouTube, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing that.
Oh,
it must be Rich.
Yeah, I think so.
But anyway,
nice little snippets of the show.
Yes, I saw a couple with Bobby Mormel, which is fabulous. All 29 episodes are on YouTube, of course, if you want to go and check him out. Fenton, thank you so much for joining us tonight. He says, thanks, fellas. Absolute pleasure, mate. Great to hear from you again. Thanks to Greg. That was all. That was just Fenton and Greg, I think, who, hogged the limelight all night. It's not working, Jace. I don't know what's going on.
No, I'll have to do this one.
We have started recently. Hey, there it is. We started recently, a few weeks back, a series of having special guests on the show. I have got some doozies lined up. One of them, which was supposed to be on tonight, but unfortunately fell through at the last minute. But we do have some really good special guests on. Looking forward to that next Wednesday, which will be, I never get it written down before I go on air. Come on, what's the date next Wednesday? It is the 31st, last day of July before into August. Wow, that was scary. So look, back 8 o'clock Australian Western Standard Time next Wednesday. Hope you can join us. Thank you so much for your company. Luke, if you're listening, I'm sure you're not, but I hope you feel better soon, mate. Suresh back hopefully next week as well, along with Rich and Jace. Thank you, Jace, for sticking around, mate. It's good fun. Maybe we should just do a podcast by ourselves. We don't need them.
Sounds good.
Or not. All right, good on you, mate.
What would that be? That would be a dude with glasses and a really good-looking guy.
Well, interchangeable. I would have thought. Good on you, Jace. Catch you, mate. Thanks.
See you, mate. See you guys.
See ya.